Talk Radio.
Welcome to Voices of Global Freedom Radio. We are broadcasting from San Diego, California. Saturday, February 14th, 2015. This is Roy Backpack Barron and our co-host Yoda. We bring our patriotic conservative audience news you can use and actionable tactics, methods, and strategies to survive and thrive in these dangerous, troubled times. We are proud to be syndicated with the popular radio networks, the SparkRadioNetwork.com, K98Talk.com, and we are among the top 5 news picks on TopTalkRadio.com. Yoda, how are you doing today?
If I was any better, brother, I would have to take something for it. Our audience is all fired up about our special guest today. A Chicago guy where I used to live. He is, as a lot of people know now from your promotion, Mr. Sobieski. He is one of us. He's a freelance published journalist. He is a conservative, traditional, incredible guy that we're dying to hear from. Mr. Sobieski, you with us?
Yes, I am. Pleasure to be with you.
Welcome to the program, brother. If you will, tell our audience a little about yourself.
Well, for the last 10 years, I've been a freelance contributor to Investors Business Daily, writing editorials for their editorial page. Before that, I was mainly had a day job in the information systems field and freelance part-time. In 1986, my literary efforts came to the attention of the local political leaders, and I was asked to run for Congress, and I ran in the 5th Congressional District of Illinois against Bill Lipinski. Of course, being a Republican in Cook County was kind of like a Don Quixote effort, but it was an interesting experience. And in oh yeah, and in 1988, when Jack Kemp was running for president, he had endorsed my '86 candidacy. So I was asked to volunteer on his presidential campaign in Illinois, and I did, serving as a co-chairman in this district. Unfortunately, his candidacy didn't get as far as the Illinois primary, but that was another interesting effort.
Sounds like our founding managing editor of the MagnifiedView.com, our sister magazine, lived in Des Plaines for a while. Her name is Jana Rama. We have a lot of the same values and interests, including anti-gun control, the border that isn't, terrorism, and our audience is dying to hear your views. It's your show, brother.
Well, I live in what I call the People's Republic of Chicago. So there are a lot of things, applicable to gun control that I could get into. And Illinois was late to the party as far as the right to carry firearms. Illinois has been notoriously anti-gun, and Chicago has been particularly anti-gun. And fortunately, there was a 76-year-old Army veteran named Otis McDonald who wondered why he could carry a gun in service of his country, but he couldn't carry a gun in protection of his family. And he filed a lawsuit because he lived in a gang-ridden area of Chicago and had been, victimized by crime. And the case went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and he won his case. And what was significant about his case was that there was an earlier case, Heller versus District of Columbia, where they had ended the debate about the Second Amendment saying that individuals could carry guns, that the militia meant the whole people. But a circuit court judge qualified that and said, but it only applied to the federal enclave of District of Columbia. What Otis McDonald did is he established the fact that it's not only an independent right, but it's nationwide. It can't be limited to the Federal Enclave, District of Columbia, because it didn't make any sense. The Bill of Rights is a Bill of individual rights, and it would make no sense to say either that the Second Amendment applied only to, like the National Guard, or that it applied only to a specific geographic area. It's a list of individual rights for all American citizens, and Otis McDonald of Chicago managed to get his case favorably ruled on and established that fact.
We just got an email that came in about. So tell us what do you have for the CCW in Chicago?
What do you have to do?
What was that? PCW?
What do you have to do to get a carrying concealed weapon permit?
To carry. Okay. Well, you have to apply for a firearms owner ID card, and it varies as to how easy that is to get and how long you have to wait. But that's basically the process. You file for the firearms owner ID card, and you have to go through a training course to demonstrate that you know how to fire a weapon and do it safely, and then they'll grant you your card. The problem in Chicago is that they try to drag their feet, and even though we have the right to bear arms finally, and Illinois is a right to carry state now, but they tried to restrict it in all sorts of ways. Like they tried to ban gun shops in Chicago. They said you couldn't transport them. There was even a case where a guy he couldn't transport his firearm from his house to his garage. That's how absurd it got. And so these are all part of what they call the sensible restrictions that the gun control advocates try to put on. Even though they say, okay, you can own a gun and you can carry a gun, but there's all sorts of restrictions they put on it.
I used to belong to a pistol team in a gun shop on Mannheim in Franklin Park, a Chicago suburb. Is that gun shop still there?
I don't know. But that was another thing that they were. At least Mayor Rahm Emanuel, former White House Chief of Staff, was arguing, and he said that most of the problem with crime in Chicago came from guns that were sold in the suburbs, and so he would say it's not the fault of Chicago gangs, it was the fault of suburban gun shops, which turned out to be an absurd argument, and we see that every day in Chicago, that 80% of the violent crime in Chicago is gang-related. Yet no one calls for gang control; they call for gun control, and they want to disarm potential victims, and not prosecute the actual criminals.
Yeah.
So where do you do your training?
Firearm training.
Yes.
I'd have to check up on that because I myself I don't own a firearm, and I haven't explored the process. But I imagine once you apply for a card, they will give you a list, or you can obtain a list of available training facilities.
Are a lot of people getting permits now?
Oh yeah.
Good thing.
Yeah, it is, and one of the points I try to make, and it's even happened in Chicago. Chicago is famously the murder capital of America, but gun crime and homicides are dropping, and they've dropped in tandem with the passage of the right to carry law, and this has happened throughout the country. The gun control zealots can't explain the fact that as firearm ownership has skyrocketed, and now right to carry is in all 50 states, gun crime has plummeted. And that's largely because predators know there's an increasing chance that their victim is going to be armed. And it's happening even in Chicago.
Absolutely, Dan. The only way to beat a bad guy with a gun is, of course, a good guy with a gun.
That's right.
Years
I
ago,
often challenge people. I said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll put a sign on my house and say, a gun owner put a sign on his house that says protected by Smith & Wesson, and then you put a sign on your house saying my house is a gun-free zone, and we'll see who becomes the victim of crime first.
Exactly. Allow me a Yoda anecdote. It's like an anecdote, only it's me. Years ago, the suburb of Oak Brook, that's wrong, I forget, one of the suburbs, anyway, had everyone turn their guns in, and they had a buyback program. You turned a gun in and you got $50. So this was highly publicized. It was Oak something. Their burglary rate thereafter, of course, went right up through the top you can imagine. They actually advertised that no one had guns anymore, so crimes to person went over the top, as did burglaries. Makes sense.
Oh yeah. I've pointed out many times that all these mass shootings, in Aurora, Colorado, at Virginia Tech, Newtown, they've all been in what are gun-free zones. And a famous case in Aurora, Colorado, where the perpetrator had 6 movie theaters closer to his house than the one he chose. And the reason he chose the theater he chose was because it publicly advertised that in Colorado you could carry a weapon, but they had rules about private places, and so it left it up to the owners to whether to let you take the gun inside. This theater advertised, no, you can't take any gun inside. So he knew when he went into that theater there would be no one there to shoot back. And the more people, there was another case in Oregon at the Clackamas Mall, where an individual who had he was a part-time sheriff, I believe, but he had a right to carry permit. And he was in the mall, and the guy came in the mall and started shooting, killed 2 people. But before he could go any further, this guy pulled out his firearm, didn't even have to fire it. As soon as the shooter knew this guy was going to shoot him, he went out in the parking lot and killed himself. And, they could have been one of those mass shootings, 30, 40 casualties. But someone, a citizen with a firearm, saved a lot of lives that day. And that's what people don't forget, that guns save lives, and more guns mean less crime.
Sure.
Emails are lighting up and pouring in right now about our show today. One of the questions that's come up about 2010, there was a Supreme Court decision 5-4 about gun rights in the state of Illinois, and can you speak more to what happened and the pros and cons of what happened in that decision?
In Illinois, this was part of the argument that the right to own firearms meant that the term militia meant something akin to the National Guard, and these court cases settled that argument by saying, it's an individual right, and it's not a militia is not a National Guard, because when the Revolution started, American Revolution started, there was no militia, there was no National Guard. There was only private citizens with guns, and they gathered together to resist tyranny. And that's what I like to point out, is that the Second Amendment is to protect the other 9 amendments and to protect people from potentially tyrannical governments and their individual liberties.
Oh.
Well, the emails are coming in. People want to know where they can find your articles.
I write for Investors Business Daily, and it should be available pretty much wherever you can get the Wall Street Journal or other business publications. We're on the internet at investors.com, and you can quickly link to our editorial page. The editorials that I write are unsigned, so you won't be able to find which one is mine. But we have a good staff, and we each have our own area of expertise. But you can find editorials on almost every subject.
Here's another email, Roy. It's from Oak Park, Illinois. That was the city that virtually banned guns.
Mm-hmm.
What's he asking, Roy?
What has the question that's just coming in? They were asking more about the concealed carry weapon, or CCW, that we were talking about before.
Mm-hmm.
If you can just expand more on that.
Well, concealed carry, like I say, Illinois was the last concealed carry state, or right to carry state. Some states, it varies. You can carry a weapon, but you can't conceal it. And other states are what you call an open carry state. Now, Illinois is right now. You have to conceal your weapon, and you have to have your firearms owner's ID card on you. And I would prefer, I don't know if I have a preference between concealed carry and open carry. I think just the fact that the predator might know you have a weapon tends to deter crime.
So a lot of emails are coming in too about what are some of the articles that you've written about recently?
I've done a lot of articles about this whole Islamic terror thing, and the fact that the administration, President Obama, cannot bring himself to say the words Islamic terrorism. I liken it to World War II, when we weren't afraid of saying the phrase Nazi Germany, even though not all Germans were Nazis. And President Obama likes to say, not all Muslims are terrorists, and that is true. But for the most part, all terrorists are Muslims. And we have to know our enemy. We have to identify our enemy in order to defeat our enemy. And you have to call our enemy by what they are. They're Islamic, and they're terrorists. And it's not enough to say, they've hijacked a religion. To their victims, that's a distinction without a difference. I mean, you don't see Christians going around beheading people, or Baptists, or Swedish nuns. These are Islamic terrorists, and they want us to return us back to a distant time, 13th century, when Islamic conquest was on the march, and you just have to face the reality of the world we live in.
Our distinguished backpack here recently uncovered numerous terrorist training camps throughout the United States. They're, of course, not tall Swedish nun training camps. They are indeed Islamic. They're compounds. He's put a series together, the first article of a series, in the magnifiedview.com. What's the title of that article, Roy?
The title is it's a series that we're going to. This is part one about terror camps in the United States, Islamic. If you go to magnifiedview.com, and also we have a website that has a map of the United States. It's called terrorcamps.com. I invite all our listeners to check out terrorcamps.com, and it's putting in the magnified view crosshairs as we see, and we're constantly updating that and expanding upon that. But we've heard so there was a story of the Beltway sniper, which happened. They were actually held by the Muslims of America, which is here. I believe they have 501c3 status, which Obama has given to a lot of the terrorists in this country. and it's just a shame. And so that's a really clear and present threat. They're training with, they're shooting up mannequins and buses, and they're learning how to use small arms fire and blow themselves up, and that's happening all across from sea to shining sea in the United States of America. What are your thoughts about that, Daniel?
It's one of my prime concerns, because a lot of and it relates to a little bit to our open borders. That crossing the borders are a significant percentage of what they call OTMs, or other than Mexicans. And these coyotes that bring people across, they're paid, I don't know, $10,000 and up to bring some individuals across the country, and they've captured a number of people from state sponsors of terror, from Yemen, Somalia, that sort of thing. So, and with the rise of ISIS, you have a great number of people who have Western passports and American passports, and so I have no doubt that it's like the Cold War days. They had the Russian sleepers. I believe that ISIS is already here in the United States, and they're organizing and they're training just like they did in Syria and Iraq. And you can see certain things, certain places in the country that are almost like what they called in Europe the no-go zones. In Minneapolis, you have what they call Little Mogadishu, which is high percentage of Somali residents. Dearborn, Michigan is becoming like a mini caliphate. And I wrote an editorial a while back about how one of the people who left Minneapolis to go join ISIS worked at the Minneapolis International Airport as a baggage handler. He had access to the tarmac, he had access to all the aircraft, and he went to go fight the ISIS. He got killed in Syria, I believe. But the ISIS is here, and I have no doubt that that they're organizing and training.
We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with Daniel Sobieski, freelance writer. Impact analyst.
Hello. I was asleep at the switch here. I want to tell the audience and our esteemed guest Sobieski about an opportunity. This is directed for anyone that has 1,000 or more email addresses. Contact Tim Kalin, president of ImpactAnalytics.com. I say again, ImpactAnalytics.com. Tim aggregates email addresses from patriotic conservative people. He produces a newsletter, and as he has this vast number of email addresses, he commands advertisers from top Fortune 100 companies. I'm going to fast forward now. Tim can explain it to you a lot better than I can. Mr. Sobieski, our distinguished guest and audience, if you have 1,000 or more emails, please contact Tim Kalin, ImpactAnalytics.com, ImpactAnalytics.com. It can really benefit you to join up with Tim. Tell Tim that Backpack and Yoda sent you down his way. I thank you.
We're back with Daniel Sobieski. We've been talking about a variety of different topics, but we want to hear more about your recent articles concerning Islamic terror and the abomination.
Well, we have to get away from this idea that being politically correct and trying to avoid stereotyping. Ann Coulter, who has written about profiling in various contexts, said that as far as terrorism goes, looking for young Middle Eastern males boarding planes was not profiling. It was called a description of the suspects, and you have to look for people who are going to kill you, not for the things they might kill you with. The problem I have, like with the Transportation Safety Agency and going through the airport lines, is they're looking for what people carry, but they're not looking for people. And they end up virtually strip searching grandmothers and young children. There was a classic case a while back of a little girl who was just brought to tears because they thought she might be carrying a bomb in her teddy bear and that sort of thing. We have to identify. The Israelis are very successful. No one blows up El Al airliners because they check people out beforehand, and they put the focus on people. And I wish we could go and do something like a traveler's ID card, so that law-abiding American citizens and law-abiding travelers could get themselves checked out and certified to fly, so we don't have to, the casual people going on vacation, we have to check them out and see if they're going to blow up the plane they're riding on. We have to focus on who the enemy is, and not just cast this wide net and hope we accidentally catch somebody.
You're lighting up our board, Dan, and what do you believe is the motivation for the abomination for what he's doing? Well, what's motivating him to do all this?
Well, he's keeping his word. I mean, he said that he was going to fundamentally transform America, and he's doing that. He's reduced our footprint in the world. One of the first things he did when he went to Cairo and apologized for America being the big bully of the world. He actually believes that a lot of the problems in the world was because America had a heavy footprint in the world. So he's cutting down our military. He's cutting down our commitments. First thing he wanted to do was shut down the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. I think he seriously believes that America is the root of all evil in the world. And he actually believes that if we make nice with Islamic terror, that they won't bother us anymore. And, I think that's wrong. I think they hate us because of who we are and not what we do. 9/11 was not a reaction to America's heavy footprint. It was a reaction to the fact that we were the leader of the free world, and they wanted to deal us a mortal blow. One of the interesting aspects of that Cairo speech was that at the very end, in Arabic, he uttered a short phrase which did not appear translated in the official transcripts. But he said in Arabic, "I'm one of you." And I believe it may have something to do with his upbringing. He once said that the sound of the morning prayer, morning Islamic prayer, was the most beautiful sound in the world. I think it's partly ideological. He wants to reduce America's footprint in the world, and I think partly it's part of his heritage. He actually believes Islam is a religion of peace, and its reaction to us is really our fault. Or like Reverend Wright said, our chicken's coming home to roost.
Yeah, that speech that you mentioned is extremely significant in the what was started with the Arab Spring, but we actually recommend all our audience to listen to one of our shows with Ashraf Ramallah, who was our guest on Voices of Global Freedom Radio. In a previous episode, he talks about, he's one of the main leaders for the Coptic Christians in Egypt, and he pointed out also that everybody that was invited to Obama's speech was Muslim Brotherhood. They didn't allow anybody that was non-Muslim Brotherhood people to be there, and a lot of Americans don't realize that the Arab Spring really brought Muslim Brotherhoods to power, and now they've had to go back, and Sisi has had to take over, and he's done a tremendous job. Everybody is really proud of what he's done, but so many tens of thousands of Christians were killed in Egypt because of Obama's decision to bring in Muslim Brotherhood. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, yeah, it goes back to recognize who the enemy is, and what really is the motivation behind Islamic terrorism. He recently, at the National Prayer Breakfast of all places, invoked the Crusades as being, one of the motivating factors behind Islamic terror, even though the Crusades followed centuries of conquest, military conquest. There's not a single Islamic country that was converted except by force of arms. And the Crusades were a response to this military conquest. Muhammad was, in fact, a military leader who he was a soldier, and he led Arab armies in conquering territory throughout the Middle East. I think that President Obama has a very misguided view of history, a very distorted view of history. He thinks Benghazi is old news, but the Crusades are relevant. How strange is that?
Right, and the nonsense that he said at the prayer breakfast was against all of us Christians across the world. Is just insulting that he would say that. And I recommend everybody to go Google and check out Dr. Bill Warner, who has written extensively and has multi-million views on YouTube channels about how he's talking about the Crusades. The reality of the Crusades were the Muslims had all the way up to the gates of Austria, Vienna. They had taken over huge chunks of Europe, and the Crusades were really about just getting rid of the Muslims out of Europe, and a lot of people don't know the history of that. It's very significant, but Dr. Bill Warner does excellent YouTube videos on that. We're looking to have him as a guest on a future show.
Yeah, and his misguided jaundiced view of history, is why he can't accept. He couldn't accept that the attack on the offices of Charlie Hebdo, the French satirical magazine, was a terrorist attack. Why he didn't want to show up and with other world leaders and protest that action. And then we had the ridiculous sight of Press Secretary Ernest trying to defend that attack, saying it was a random attack. Jewish population in Europe, Jews are like 0.2% of the world population. So the idea that they would go into a kosher deli and the only 4 people they would kill were Jews was a random act is just silly. He can't acknowledge the reality of world terrorism, and until he does, we're in deep trouble.
Yeah, one of the breaking news stories that just happened today in Denmark is associated with cartoonist was murdered. Have you heard about that breaking news?
Oh yeah, and it's happened before. A while back, a couple of years ago, I wrote an editorial about Theo van Gogh, who was a Dutch filmmaker, and he produced a film documenting how Islam treats women, particularly under Sharia law, and he was killed because he made that film. So it's not it's happened before. Free speech is under attack here, but it's under attack by people who want to hide the truth about Islam.
As a matter of fact, brother, 1 out of 4 people in the world are Muslims.
Mm-hmm.
If you look, 1 out of 4, man, if you look into the Quran, which we feature verbatim in the magnifiedview.com, they are sworn to support a caliphate. Means taking over the world. The last effective one was 2025 in the Ottoman Empire in Turkey. So all Muslims must support, they must not oppose a caliphate, which ISIS is effectively creating now with an estimated 50,000 army in Syria.
One of the ways they intend to pursue this caliphate is demographically. One of the things I noted recently about the Islamic State is they're advertising for Western women to come to their caliphate and serve as human incubators for the Islamic State. And one of the problems in Europe is a demographic problem, that the ethnic Europeans have a negative population growth, but the Islamic immigrants, are ironically heeding the Christian call to be fruitful and multiply, and the demographics are not favorable, and that's all part of their dream of a caliphate.
Excellent point. There's a projection on YouTube. I forget the name of it, but it shows their growth versus our decline. And it's like 2050 maybe. I don't know. They will have huge numbers in the United States and will still be on a decline. Amazing, really. What in the hell motivates a gal or a guy to go join these atrocities? I was privy to a recent declassified intelligence committee meeting, and everyone, some pretty smart people in there, people from the major letter agencies, are as perplexed as I am as how you can grow up in the United States and then wake up one morning from emails and from the internet, I've got a good idea, I'm going to go cut people's heads off in Syria. Isn't that the damnedest mindset, really?
Well, if you're the first person to understand the liberal progressive mind who's going to win the next Nobel Prize, I think, it goes back to the hippies in the 60s, and, young people, liberals. They want to feel, part of something beyond themselves. By my own actions, I can change the world, and they want to be part of something important. It's the same thing with Occupy Wall Street. We're doing something important. We're changing the world. I want to buy the world a Coke sort of mentality, or can't we all get along? It's a mindset that's particularly susceptible to the temptations of a movement like ISIS and terrorism. There's no logic to it. For them, it's a lot of romance to it in a bizarre sort of way. But they just want to be part of something important. The drudgery of normal everyday life in a capitalist society, is too much for them. They want to change the world, and they want to do it quickly, and they want to do it now. And in fact, that's their chant. When do we want it? We want it now.
You're getting kudos all over our emails. We get a lot of emails while guests are on air. And Backpack, our man, has certainly lit up the emails. I've had me.
Yeah, we have.
My word.
Yeah.
Here's one asking, what do you forecast, just a personal opinion ask of you. It's a lady in Scottsdale, Arizona. She wants to know, paraphrasing, your thought of the threat to terrorist attacks in the United States.
I think there's going to be a very big event. I don't know when, and I don't know if it's going to be in the near future. But I heard an analysis the other day saying just that because we let our guard down, and because we have open borders, and because we have political correctness, the plans are already underway for a major attack of some sort. It could be chemical, it could be biological, it could be an attack on our power grid. They had a short time ago power station in California was methodically shut down by people with rifles who knew where to fire and what to fire at. And so I think there's going to be a pretty significant event. It's going to be possibly on the scale of 9/11. I don't know when, but I really believe that it's a greater than 50% chance.
The real experts would certainly agree with you that power station probe attack you mentioned is indeed a harbinger. As you know, in our other life, we work with major letter agencies and law enforcement. The analysis of that was on a Monday morning, during multiple rush hours, if they hit 9 stations throughout the grid from coast to coast with high-powered rifles, they can somehow shut down the grid. I don't pretend to understand that technically, but that was the evaluation of people who do that for a living. Amazing. And the power companies are hiding from that. In committee, all they wanted to know was how this word got out. They didn't want to know what to do about it or take any action about it. So, yeah. There's a great Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
Exactly.
We do indeed live in interesting times, don't we? Wow.
Oh, we do. And, I go by I believe in the mantra, if you see something, say something. A lot of what has happened in the United States, whether it be these lone wolf terrorists or whatever, I mean, it's not been entirely hidden. I mean, I look at the Tsarnaev brothers, and people knew that they were kind of off the grid. The government knew what they were up to, and the Russians warned our government of what they were up to, and yet nothing was done until the bombing at the Boston Marathon. And we look at Nidal Hassan, who shot up Fort Hood. He was on the public radar. He was emailing with al-Awlaki in Yemen, and the government, our military, was aware of what was going on, and yet nothing was done. If we're going to prevent another terrorist attack, we just have to look around us and say, "Hey, what's that? What are you doing?" And just pay attention, and not be afraid, to say of charges of racism or insensitivity. Our first duty is to protect the lives of the American population, and we can worry about the political correctness later.
Well said, Dan.
Yeah, well, we're getting a lot of audience approval here. We're excited to have you back. We're going to take a really short break, and we'll be back. We're with Daniel Sobieski, and we're talking about Islam terror. And this is back here. I want to tell you about a brave American hero, retired General Adino, a brigadier general, one of our close friends, who's been on our show twice before with Voices of Global Freedom. He was embedded with the Kurds for over a year, and he has currently serves as the senior advisor to the Kurdistan National Assembly of Syria. He also serves as the senior vice president of Radon Corporation. Please go check out his blog. It's at generaladino.wordpress.com. And General, and his last name is spelled AUDINO.wordpress.com. Yoda, are we privileged to be working with General Adino?
Indeed we are. He's one of the best. As you commented, Backpack, he and a small team lived, worked, ate, hung out, slept sometimes was decorated for his efforts embedded with a national team, indigenous team of Kurds in northern Syria and Iraq. What an accomplishment. He's a true freedom fighter, and our privilege and pleasure to have him as a friend. And tell the audience, please, once more, Backpack, how they can find his site.
His website is generaladino.wordpress.com, and I also invite the audience to check out the 2 previous interviews that we had that were really great. We're back. Daniel, how are you doing?
Fine.
Great. So what are some of the other articles that you've written recently?
Well, one of the things I've been concerned about is the decline in the American military through budget cuts and sequestration, and a general view of this administration that the Cold War is over. We don't need a Cold War weapons. Military is returning to the days of Jimmy Carter, when we had ships that couldn't sail for want of spare parts. We had insufficient crews. Right now, we have planes that are older than the pilots who fly them. There was a case of an Air Force pilot in Japan who flew the same F-15 that his father flew, and we are not developing the high-tech weapons that we need to deal with the threats that exist out there. I think Mitt Romney was right. The Cold War is not over. Russia is a key strategic threat. They're allied with China, who's developing very high-tech weaponry, and the Chinese will probably be walking on the moon before we get there. And the same missiles that will put their astronauts on the moon are the missiles that are going to be targeted on the United States. And I'm very concerned about that. We get too caught up sometimes we get too caught up with terrorism. We forget there are some very traditional threats out there, and we need to pay attention to our military. And I always tell people, defense is in the Constitution. Obamacare is not.
Good on you. Sure, we've been at proxy wars with Russia since 1945. Take a look at the magnifiedview.com. We list all the wars, so-called military conflicts. We've been constantly at war since 1945 and before. That includes Korea, Vietnam, currently in the Crimea. We're disappointing NATO allies now, Latvia, Estonia, Poland. They are scared to death that we're disappointing them, and we're emboldening Russia again.
I wrote an editorial a couple of weeks ago about the fact that we are not sending anything other than blankets and night vision goggles to Ukraine. We worry about ISIS in Iraq and Syria, but we're not arming them. There are plenty of people around the world who are willing to be our proxies. They're willing to fight our battles for us and be our allies. If we gave the Ukrainians the defensive weapons that they required, Putin would be in very deep trouble. And the same thing with ISIS. If we armed the Kurds to the same extent that ISIS is armed with captured American weapons, I think ISIS would have a serious problem. So we need to do a lot, like what Reagan did. Reagan would go, and when he went down to Nicaragua and helped the freedom fighters, and he could arm the insurgents in Afghanistan, and encourage the resistance in Eastern Europe. We have to find our natural allies and support them.
Well, observe how Reagan quieted down Gaddafi.
Exactly.
Bombed bombed 11 terrorist training camps in Libya, and that was the end of Gaddafi for a while.
He almost put one in his tent too.
Exactly.
But that shows you the difference between the right approach and the wrong approach. Obama, Gaddafi after Reagan, lobbed a few cruise missiles near his tent, he became very quiet. He said, "I don't want to whine," and then he made the comment after we captured Saddam Hussein. He said he turned off all his nuclear secrets because he said, "I don't want to wind up being pulled out of a hole like he was." And here comes Obama and goes in there and says, "Well, you know what? He's a dictator. He's evil." What did somebody said? He may be an SOB, but he was our SOB. Obama goes in there and just mucks it up. Now Libya is a failed state run by terrorists. He said Yemen was one of our success stories. It's another failed state run by terrorists. And another thing about that, and it really ticked me off when the Marines were forced to destroy their rifles. I can't recall any recent memory when that's happened. It used to be that the only way you separated a Marine as his weapon is if he was dead. But here was the State Department saying, no, you got to take the bolts out, you have to smash the bolts, and then you have to smash the guns, and you have to leave the pieces on the tarmac at the airport. While we had 2 amphibious ships loaded with more Marines and aircraft that could have flown in there, picked these guys up with their rifles, with their dignity, and if anybody shot at them, they would shoot back.
I've been shot at a lot. It's a real good idea to shoot back, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The bad guys are driving 23 of our embassy vehicles around now.
Oh, yeah.
We literally, under orders, left the keys in the ignition. We destroyed some crew-served weapons, heavy machine guns, mortars, like that. The irony of the Obama nation coming out bragging about its relationship with Yemen, and now it's falling like an anchor. It's just too much irony for my collection. And wow. I don't see... Sorry, brother. I see ISIS now taking a hard look at Saudi Arabia. Here's a hypothetical question for you and Backpack. As you know, there's a couple hundred or 300 Marines at a huge Air Force base in Iraq. It was assaulted by 9 suicide bombers past couple days, dressed as Iraq soldiers. They were supported by a platoon of backup. Let's say ISIS continues this, and God forbid, kills or captures some of our poor Marines stationed there. What do you see the reaction of Obama, hypothetically, you guys? What do you see the reaction of the American people to that tragedy?
Well, I know the American people would be outraged, and rightly so. The Obama administration would probably consider this one of the downs. The Pentagon spokesman mentioned that this is going to be a war with ups and downs, and they would consider that one of the downs. I don't think they would. Fortunately, I don't think they would consider that a reason to put boots on the ground, real boots on the ground, do the shooting ourselves. One of the great tragedies of this administration was to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. We wanted to leave 10,000 troops there, and if the 10,000 troops had stayed there, ISIS, we wouldn't be having any conversation about the Islamic State. I see there's a famous picture of a convoy of ISIS trucks, and when I saw that picture, I said, one Apache helicopter would take up in about 10 minutes, could have wiped out that entire convoy. And all it requires is the will, but I don't see that will existing in this administration. The American people would be outraged, but I don't know if that outrage could be translated into action.
I agree with Daniel Sobieski that Americans will be outraged, but I do believe it will be a reason to bring boots on the ground if that Air Force base is significantly attacked, and we want to make sure that they are well protected and that our Marines are safe and healthy.
Well, what we probably could do, we should do is have a real air campaign, and it may not even require boots on the ground. You know, we know. You know, if they're gathering at an army base, at a base in Iraq, 2 miles from that base, we know where they're at. We've got the targets. You know, all we have to do is send over some Apache helicopters and do what the Jordanians did. You know, when one of their pilots got burned alive, they sent out more flights per day than we were, and did serious damage to the Islamic State. The line I use, it says, when the Jordanian pilot is killed, Jordan attacks. When an American aid worker is killed, Obama plays golf.
Truth in it, Roy.
Yeah. So one of the things we were talking about, how there's been so many cuts in defense, is that we're back to 1938 levels of defense, and we're no longer, this is the first time in American history we can't fight a war on two fronts. So this is really, the military is really hurting right now. What are your thoughts, Daniel, about that?
Well, you know, I mean, it's really true. Even if we had the will to fight, you know, we wouldn't have much to fight with. A lot of our when you have 1,000 troops, you got to have several times more that number and support people. So to put a brigade on the front lines takes a lot of material and personnel and administration, and we just don't have the budget to support that anymore. There are a lot of our units, a lot of our combat units are not ready to deploy. A lot of our ships are sitting in port because we don't have the fuel to sail them. We don't have the crews to maintain them. We're almost at the point where you have to start cannibalizing equipment to keep some equipment available, and our enemies know this. Like I say, the first job of the government is to protect the people from enemies, foreign and domestic, and that includes a military that can protect us from any potential adversary.
We work closely with the military here, Dan. I'm a Air Force and an Army veteran. I have never seen morale as it is today, or nothing like it. I was in the Korean police action, underage, and then went into the Army. As I said, morale as it might be now is rock bottom. As Backpack said, should we be fully engaged somehow as a result of the Crimea or against ISIS? Hypothetically, should North Korea exploit that, take advantage of it, we will be able to meet them size on in a set-piece battle in Korea. Everybody knows this. All the hostile intelligence services are well aware of this, of course. Emails are coming, Backpack.
All right, we're excited to have Daniel Sobieski. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be back with him. This is Backpack. We want to tell you about a brave American hero, retired United States Army Major General Paul Vallely. StandUpAmericaUS.org is a network of patriotic Americans. Stand Up America USA collects, analyzes, and evaluates intelligence for the safety of America. Over to you, Yoda.
General Vallely, there are 4,700 retired general officers in the United States. He is one of the top of the top. Back in the day, it was a career killer in the Army to be a ranger or even a paratrooper. Despite that, he came up through the ranks as a paratrooper, as a jump master, and as a ranger. Again, tell the audience his handle, his site, please, Rick.
His site is standupamericauS.org.
In addition, we've got an Air Force general coming on in a couple weeks. We're delighted to have him on. These guys' credentials are extraordinary. They're PhDs. They've attended Stanford and Harvard. And civilians have no appreciation or knowledge of their incredible credentials. What's that Air Force brigadier's name, Russ?
We're excited to have John Michel, who's a leadership trainer and Brigadier General, United States Air Force. He will be coming on next week, Saturday, 4 p.m. Pacific. We're back with Daniel Sobieski, award-winning journalist and freelance writer. So, Daniel, what are your thoughts about the situation as far as the Christian? Well, there was the prayer breakfast nonsense about how Obama's basically insulted all the Christians in the entire world. What's some of the feedback that you've gotten on that?
He has managed to insult Christians and Jews. The only people he doesn't want to insult are Muslims. He insulted Jews with his reaction to the Charlie Hebdo massacre. He insulted Christians even before the National Prayer Breakfast by his indifference. Like I say, the Coptics in Egypt have had their churches bombed and their people killed. Iraqi churches have been under attack for quite a while, and it's an indifference to that, which people find curious and outrageous, and which is why he doesn't get much traction when he tries to defend Islam, because there aren't Christians blowing up mosques and beheading imams, but it's happening in the other direction. And until he condemns Islamic terror for what it is and acknowledge its religious motivation, people say he spoke of the evils committed in the name of Christ. Yes, there were some, but these were people disobeying what Christ said. People behead when ISIS beheads, and when they burn Jordanian pilots alive and they bomb Christian churches, they are acting on verses from the Quran, and so you can't equate the two. You can't equate evils done in the name of Christ with. So this is what Obama will never have pass his lips: evils committed in the name of Muhammad.
I invite our audience and listeners to check out a previous episode we had on Voices of Global Freedom Radio with IQ Razuli, which is his pen name. He's an apostate who converted to Christianity. He was from Iraq and tortured there, and he's written volumes about how, in proof, without a doubt, that Islam is a cult. It's not even a religion. And so he actually put $1 million bet to CAIR, which stands for Council on American Islamic Relations, which really is a terrorist front group celebrated by Obama. But he can prove $1 million to CAIR and ISNA and all the other embedded terrorist groups in the United States to prove that whether Islam is a cult or not. None of them have taken him up on his bet. What has your undercover work found with CAIR and ISNA and some of those other front groups that are really supported by terrorism that are here running rampant in the United States?
Well, I read a piece the other day where it said that one of the precepts of Islam, and I forget what the Arabic phrase is for it, but it's deception. That you are allowed to deceive the infidel, and that's part of the program for building the caliphate, for expanding the influence of Islam in the world. You never be honest about what you're doing, and I believe that I can kind of agree with the idea that Islam is more of a cult than a religion, simply because its founder Muhammad was a military leader who is said to have beheaded many people on his own, and allegedly was something of a child predator. And so this is not the type of founder of a religion that would be founding a religion. Most religions like Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, whatever, they all have a peace as part of their basis. And Islam is a religion of conquest. It's not a religion. The phrase I like to use is that Christianity says that God sent His Son to die for us, and Islam teaches that you're supposed to send your sons to die for God. And there's something wrong with that picture.
Right, and one of the key distinguishing things too when it comes to this discussion is how many people are living for an afterlife versus for this life, and making changes in leadership and contributing to make the world a better place for our children and our children's children. But that's one of the big deciding things. What are your thoughts about Islam? Is really about the afterlife. It's all this great stuff, the virgins and all that, versus really focusing on this life, what's going on now.
Well, I mean, I saw a cartoon. Well, it wasn't a cartoon. It was one of those photoshopped things. It showed a picture of what as an Islamic jihadist would really see after being killed, and going to meet his 72 virgins. And he saw his 72 virgins, all right, but they were all Catholic nuns, aren't with the AR-15s. And Christianity, Christianity is really a religion of peace. Love thy neighbor. If don't let he who is without sin cast the first stone. And Islam teaches that if you don't convert to it, you are justifiably killed. And conquest is the order of the day. Convert or die. This is what what ISIS is doing in Iraq and Syria. They give you three choices. They say either you convert or you pay a tax and continue to your infidelity. And I forget what the third one is, but basically it's convert or die.
We're going to take a call here. Area code 845. Area 845. If you want to say your name or your handle and speak your mind.
Can you hear us? From New York.
Go ahead if you can. Yeah, we can hear you.
It's Mike calling from New York. I just tuned in, so I think I missed most of the show. But so far, what I've heard, I agree with 100%. A lot of people, and the way that I feel is the average person out there, they judge what's going on and how they judge, how they view Islam and everything else based on how they live their lives here in this country, in America. And that's taken for granted that all of you are here in the U.S. and not in the U.K. or Canada. I'm sorry for assuming that, but and they're wrong. What they should do is a lot of these people should go over to the Middle East and actually get a good reality, get a good wake-up, and really see what it's like over there and see what this religion is all about firsthand before they start commenting or start believing what the government is telling us, and really see what it's like to have these terrorists pulling these stunts like what happened today in Denmark. But they say no, religion of peace. It's a religion of peace. Based on what? Based on what? I don't see it. I mean, myself,
we agree with you, caller.
Yeah, I'm of Greek heritage, and I mean, we got a good dose of the Ottoman Empire, so it's not exactly the religion of peace that I don't see it that way whatsoever. But they can redefine it. To me, a lot of these, it's a fraternity. A lot of these religions, they've created a fraternity based on religion, which dictates to the people how you worship, how you practice your religion. But you just belong to a club, a fraternity, and Islam really is really worrisome. I mean, this club, this cult, has existed for so long, and it's very violent. And it's coming knocking on our door now, and enough is enough.
Well, thank you very much for your call, caller. Did you have any questions for our guest today?
No, I just regret that I missed the rest of the other parts of the show. Sorry about that. I saw that it was about Chicago and the death rate in Chicago. I'm very pro-Second Amendment, so that was the reason I saw your title, and I came in on it. As being a gun collector for 45 years, I mean, I'm very pro-Second Amendment. So
we are, Yoda here, we're delighted you called. Take a look at magnifiedview.com, our sister magazine. You'll see a lot of pro-gun articles there. Send us an email anytime. Send it to yoda@magnifiedview.com, and I will personally respond. It may take a few days, but I will. We'd love to hear from you personally. Keep your powder dry. Keep your powder dry, brother. Thanks for the call.
Oh, up here in New York, we're having a hard time keeping it dry, but we're fighting the fight.
Understood. Be safe, my man.
Thank you. So, Daniel, we're back with you, and we're talking about the Islamic menace to America. We've talked a lot about what are some things going on. We've heard reports that 20,000 United States and Canadians have gone over to Syria and Iraq. What do you think are some of the penalties that should happen to these people if they ever try to get back to the United States?
Well, the first thing I would do is if they were carriers of U.S. passports, I would just strip them of their passports. I said, you want to go over there, and I believe there's a provision of federal law that allows this to be done, that if you go to fight with a terrorist enemy of the United States, you should be stripped of your passport. I don't think you could strip them of their citizenship just by the proverbial executive order, but you could deprive them of their passport and deny their return. I was very upset when the FBI director said that if these guys returned, we'll keep an eye on them. I said, wait a minute. Yeah, you knew who the Tsarnaev brothers were, and you couldn't keep an eye on them. But you're going to keep an eye on these untold number of people that are going to come back freely, and wait for their time to come. I don't think so. I said, first thing we should do is just strip them of their passports, and the other thing we can do is maybe send over a few of those drones and start taking care of. You want to fight and die for ISIS? You want to meet the 72 virgins? We'll be happy to arrange the meeting for you.
In our other life, we say we're tour guides up to Allah.
That's right. Right. You want to die for Allah? We're here to help you. And I agree with Colonel Ralph Peters. I said our strategy should be we don't have a strategy, but if we had one, it should be to kill them all, and when we're done, kill their pet goats. And if you want to fight for dice, we've already established a policy of we've already killed American citizens overseas with drones. If you want to fight for the enemy of the United States, you're a traitor, and you assume all the risks.
Actually, it's a felony to fight for a foreign army.
Oh, yeah.
It's a congressional Title 18 felony, and nobody's talking about that. So when they landed, you could arrest them on that basis. When they landed, you could try them.
Exactly. You could greet them at the airport and put the cuffs on them. And there's an interesting sidelight to that, which I wrote about. One of the reasons that President Obama does not want to call, say, the Taliban a terrorist group is because of the trade that was made for 5 Taliban leaders for a deserter, Boy Bergdahl. If Obama admitted that the Taliban was a terrorist group, he would be eligible for prosecution under the federal law against providing material aid to a terrorist enemy. So as long as he calls himself them an armed insurgency, he's technically avoiding that violation of that statute. I personally think he's given aid and comfort to a terrorist enemy, under which people have already been prosecuted. Judge Andrew Napolitano said that that law includes, providing assets to the enemy, including human assets, which he has done. And I think that's probably the real reason he's avoiding the phrase Islamic terror and calling the Taliban a terrorist group, because he's implicated personally.
Do we wonder now what the Taliban 5 is doing in their 4-star hotel in Yemen? It's incredible, really.
Yeah, I'm sure they're not working on a second career in business. They're not going to open up a McDonald's franchise in Qatar. One or more of them has already been in communication with their brethren, and some of them might possibly return. In fact, I think it's quite short. In a matter of months, they will be eligible to go anywhere in the world they want to. And, they're the rock stars of the terrorist world. Even if they don't go directly into combat, they're the world's best terrorist consultants, the best recruiters for terrorism. They escaped the great Satan's clutches, and they'll be back. And Americans will die as a result of that trade. In fact, Americans have already died. At least 6 soldiers lost their lives looking for Bergdahl. And I think it was a national tragedy when Bergdahl's parents showed up in the Rose Garden while we let a Marine rot in a Mexican jail. Obama says we don't leave anyone behind. Well, we left a Marine in Mexico simply because he took a wrong left turn, but we welcome back a deserter.
You can't be a Muslim with a small M.
No.
You can be a Catholic with a small C. You can take your mother to church, on Easter. But I've traveled Islam from Morocco to Egypt and throughout the Arabian Peninsula. I existed there for a while, and it takes over every molecule of their being and second to their wretched existence. They appear hypochondriacal and they're just schizophrenic, really. But you can't be one with a small m. They have to go for it, which is what they do. The past 5 presidents, to my utter irritation, and the new one is quite a bit of work, the closet Muslim Obama, talking about moderate, tolerant. You can't be that and be a Muslim. It just doesn't work that way. What the hell are the Taliban 5 now is really atrocious, and was from the get-go.
Well, that's part of that. Part of that is that they just one of the campaign promises he wants to keep is closing Guantanamo Bay, and if he can get the worst of the worst out of his way, then he can make the case, say that, well, there's nothing, nobody really left of consequence, so we might as well close the facility down. They were even toying with the idea, which I found personally offensive, of transferring Gitmo inmates to U.S. prisons. In fact, there was a unused federal facility in Illinois where they were going to bring a bunch of them. And, of course, once they were there, they'd be eligible for, full benefits, full American legal benefits, lawyers and all that. And he just wants to, he doesn't care about the consequences to American security. It's just a matter of keeping a campaign promise and removing one of his claimed irritants to the Muslim world, even though there was no Guantanamo Bay to inflame Islam prior to 9/11. He still uses that excuse.
Excellent point, really. I believe sincerely there's something more diabolical and nefarious than keeping campaign promises. That 20% free stuff people that follow him don't care what he does anyway. They'd vote for him no matter what the hell he does. After the recent burning alive, Muslims around the world, Pakistan, Yemen, Iraq, Afghanistan, elsewhere, were celebratory. They were on the street cheering large-screen TV portrayals of the poor bastard burning alive. So this is our moderate Muslims around the world, of which 1 out of every 4 people in the world are Muslim, and it's growing, you guys.
Yeah, we recently had a guest, Captain Marshall Frank, who is head of the Miami-Dade police, on, and he talked about a lot of people don't realize that the United States America prison systems they allow conversions to Islam and they get benefits. So a lot of the prisoners in the United States become Islam through the prison systems here. It's just outrageous.
Started up the road here in Chino, a state prison, where a black gang, cadre with Black Panthers, discovered if they pretend to convert to Islam, they get all kind of privileges in prison. That then spread to other prisons, and it was carried out on the street to the Black Panthers and other black gangs. It's a real story of that. I've met with them personally in a law enforcement capacity. Most of them wouldn't know Islam, but they pretend to be, and everybody thinks they are. Anyway. The five presidents are still talking about where the hell are the moderate, tolerant, peaceful ones? They're not around the world. They're not around the world recently having big cheering for this poor guy literally burned alive. That's not the moderate, peaceful one.
Well, I've heard the phrase, and I kind of think it's true, that a radical Muslim is someone who wants to kill you, and a moderate Muslim is someone who wants a radical Muslim to kill you. And so it's kind of true. And one of the apostasies in Islam is that if you're insufficiently zealous, if you just want to be someone, like a Western Christian who wants to have a good life and give their children a better life, well, that in Islam that does not cut it. You got to slay the infidels, or you got to support those who do, or else you yourself become a target. And I tell people that one of the biggest killers of Muslims are other Muslims. And I remember us going, and the knock against the United States about being, insufficiently supportive of moderate Islam. Well, I remember Bosnia, where we went and our troops our pilots were put at risk defending Muslims, and we fought wars in Iraq and Afghanistan in large part to defend Muslims. And so there's this canard that somehow we have provoked Islamic wrath. It's just that. It's bogus, because we've done more to protect Muslims than Muslims have.
We got a call from area code 914. We just have about 5 minutes left, but if you can speak your mind and ask a question, please.
All right, gentlemen, it's Mike again from New York. I put down my cell, but I had a quick, now that I'm up to speed with what you guys are covering on the topic, I'm a military historian. I specialize in World War II. And I think a lot of people, they're afraid of the terrorists. They're afraid of the attitude. They don't want to insult the Muslims. The politically correct stuff is out of control. But what they don't realize, a lot of people, is the world has never seen a more fearsome terrorist, if you want to label it, as what the Japanese were in World War II. Because you had these people who were willing to die for a living emperor, a living god. Their emperor was their living god. And whether you take a look at the footage, the film footage of women with their children jumping off cliffs in Okinawa, Saipan, committing suicide with their children rather than be captured by the evil Americans. And you didn't see any Muslims jumping in the rivers in Iraq when we took Baghdad, committing suicide. No. But what did it take to stop that terrorist, the fanaticism that the Japanese had in World War II? 2 footprints, 2 cities, and that ended it. But we don't have the strength, the determination. We're not as determined as what we were in World War II. Common sense doesn't exist today. We learned the lessons back then, but we've forgotten them now, and we're going to pay the price.
Mike, second great call. Damn it, we're out of time. This thing will shut us down like an anchor. I am that old. I hold an occupation medal from Germany. I really want to hear from you. Please send me an email, yoda@magnifiedview.com. In the subject line, put radio. Sorry we're out of time. It's flown by today. Thanks for the second call, Mike. Back to you.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Daniel Sobieski. What are some of the takeaways that you want our listeners to hear? We've got about 3 minutes left.
Well, I think I go back to a phrase of General MacArthur in that there's no substitute for victory. We have to. This is a war we have to win. It's a war we have to win as much as the Cold War, when we defeated the evil empire, Soviet communism, and we have to defeat Islamic. I call it Islamofascism. With equal determination. It may take as long a time. It took us 50 years to bring down the Berlin Wall, and it may take us that long. But I believe it's the long twilight struggle that John F. Kennedy once mentioned. The price of liberty is eternal vigilance. You have to fight for your freedom every day, and unless we do that with certainty and determination, we're going to see our freedoms nibbled away one by one, and we're going to see our nation increasingly put in a perilous condition.
Excellent appearance. You got the highest marks from what the show's all about. That would be the audience. We'd like to get you back again, Dan.
Yeah, it was great. How can our listeners find you?
They can find me on Twitter. It's @Gerfingerpoken, GerPoken. I'm at Facebook, just /Daniel Sobieski, and or you can sign on to investors.com, and there's a good chance you'll read something I write.
And just briefly, what are your plans in 2015?
To light my candles rather than curse the darkness. I'm fighting for freedom one editorial at a time, and those are my plans.
It's been great having you on the show, and this show will be in archives on blogtalkradio.com/Voices of Global Freedom. So our listener from New York, you can catch the whole show, and all our listeners. We want to thank all the listeners. We want to thank you, Daniel Sobieski, for being on our show. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, too.
Thank you so much. We want to also talk about Ricky Robinson featuring us on Drive Prime Time every Friday on the SparkRadioNetwork.com. And we want to thank K98Talk.com for being syndicated with them. And also, please check out TopTalkRadio.com. And our dear friend Ken Kaplan has us on the top 5 news picks for TopTalkRadio.com. Thank you all so much, and Voices of Global Freedom Radio, we're really proud and honored to have a great lineup. John Michel will be coming on next week, Brigadier General, United States Air Force. So thank you all so much. Have a great day.